Welcome back to WION World is One. You're watching Speed News with me, Vidur Kathuria. Let's get started. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been invited by US President Donald Trump to join the board of Peace for Gaza. So far, New Delhi has not confirmed whether Prime Minister Modi has accepted the invite. US Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, shared a letter on social media from Trump to Prime Minister Modi inviting India's participation in the board of Peace for Gaza. The board has been set up as part of a United Nations-backed US plan to demilitarize and rebuild Gaza after 2 years of devastating conflict between Israel and the Hamas militant group. The panel will be chaired by the US President. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has issued a stern warning to US President Donald Trump, saying any attack on Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would spark an all-out war against Iran. The warning comes as tensions remain high following Trump's earlier threats of military action. According to reports, while calm has returned to the streets, public concern over possible US strikes has slowed commercial activity. Demonstrators in New York have taken to the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans in solidarity with protesters in Iran. The rally follows a violent crackdown by Iranian authorities that activists say left thousands dead. Protests across Iran began in late December. Demonstrations driven by public anger over economic hardship quickly grew into what many described as the most serious challenge to the country's leadership in years. US President Donald Trump has threatened tariffs on European allies over Greenland, prompting the European Union to scramble for a response. EU officials are weighing possible countermeasures, including what some are calling a trade bazooka, a potential package of tariffs on $107 billion worth of US imports. If enacted, the tariffs could automatically take effect on February 6th following a 6-month suspension. EU leaders are set to hold an emergency meeting this Thursday to finalize their strategy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv is working with US President Donald Trump's team on documents aimed at ending the war with Russia. Ukraine is seeking increased international pressure on Moscow. Zelensky said Ukraine is keeping Washington fully informed about Russia's ongoing strikes on energy infrastructure and noted that Moscow has shown little real interest in diplomacy. He added that talks with the US side are expected to continue next week. As Russian attacks continue to target Ukraine's energy infrastructure, residents of a Kyiv housing complex are taking an unusual approach to blackout life, throwing a street party. Participants say the gathering is meant to lift spirits and foster community during extended power outages. A crane has collapsed at a mechanical plant in Bugulma, Tatarstan during normal working hours, officials say. The 63-year-old woman fell from the crane's cabin and suffered injuries. The prosecutor's office is looking into the cause of the accident. Orthodox Christians in Russia have marked the Epiphany by plunging into icy waters in Moscow. This despite temperatures dropping below -10 degrees Celsius. The tradition observed each January draws worshippers who believe the ritual brings spiritual cleansing. Participants say the cold water immersion helps them feel purified and closer to their faith, even in the freezing conditions. Postal workers in Minneapolis took part in a protest on Sunday as over 2,000 immigration enforcement officers have been sent to the city and nearby St. Paul. Demonstrations have been held every day throughout January after the Department of Homeland Security increased enforcement efforts. In a multicultural neighborhood where immigrations and customs enforcement agents have recently been visible, the postal workers marched chanting, "Protect our roots, get ICE out." Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Davos, Switzerland on Sunday against the World Economic Forum, which is hosting corporate leaders and political figures, including US President Donald Trump. Demonstrators demanded an end to capitalism and wars that are driving climate change, and called for an economy that is more democratic and focused on people's needs. Spanish authorities say the death toll from Sunday's train collision in southern Spain has climbed to 21. The Civil Guard confirmed the updated figure, while officials have yet to give a final count of those hurt. Emergency services in the Andalusia region report at least 25 people are seriously injured. The crash has caused major disruption to rail travel, with all high-speed train services between Madrid and cities including Cordoba, Seville, Malaga and Huelva suspended throughout Monday. This as investigations and recovery work continue. A container ship loaded with 383 tons of humanitarian aid has departed from the port of Le Havre, bound for Gaza. The shipment includes food supplies intended for 42,000 children, aimed at preventing severe malnutrition. This, according to Pascal Confavreau, spokesperson for France's Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs. Guatemalan security forces moved in on Sunday to regain control of a maximum security prison following violent inmate riots. Authorities reported deadly gang attacks against police in the capital, while hostages were still held at other facilities. Video from the scene shows armored vehicles arriving as shots rang out and police charged towards the prison. Thousands of Syrian Kurdish families displaced by fighting in Aleppo and Raqqa have arrived in Qamishli on Sunday after government forces advanced in the region. The families fled clashes between Syrian government troops and the Syrian Democratic Forces, with many bringing their belongings in personal vehicles. A local cultural center has been converted into a temporary shelter. The search operation began late Sunday at Karachi's Gul Plaza after fire crews finally managed to extinguish a blaze that had raged for more than 24 hours. The death toll in the tragedy has risen to 10, while over 50 people are still reported missing. Rescue teams entered the heavily damaged building to look for survivors and recover bodies, even as the structure continued to cool. The fire, which started on Saturday night, had been brought under roughly 70% control by Sunday afternoon. Drone footage has revealed widespread devastation from wildfires sweeping through central and southern Chile. Video from the coastal town of Penco in the Biobío region shows burned out homes, scorched land and police guarding covered bodies. Authorities say the blazes have killed at least 18 people, destroyed hundreds of homes and burned thousands of acres of forest. The fires are being fueled by extreme heat as Chile endures an intense heat wave. Displaced families in Syria are facing new challenges as heavy snowfall blankets the northwestern province of Idlib. Recent storms have brought unprecedented snow accumulation in some areas, turning makeshift tents into precarious shelters. In camps across western Idlib, paths are muddy, snow piles remain unmelted, and leaks in tents make survival even more difficult. Fuel shortages and limited aid mean that families must rely on occasional odd jobs just to get by. The Tigris River, a lifeline for agriculture in northern Iraq, is showing alarming low water levels after years of drought. Farmers in Dohuk and surrounding areas have struggled to grow crops, and even recent rainfall provides only a temporary reprieve. Much of the Tigris's flow originates in Turkey, while other rivers supplying the region are controlled by Iran. Water release from the Mosul Dam is often redirected to meet the needs of southern Iraq, leaving northern farmers with limited access. A thick blanket of smog shrouded Bosnia's Sarajevo, pushing air pollution to dangerous levels. Residents of the Bosnian capital, home to over 250,000 people, woke to dense haze trapped in the city's valley. Air quality readings indicated very unhealthy conditions with fine particulate matter at especially high levels. Authorities say they will step up inspections of domestic heating, enhance street cleaning, curb industrial activity and adjust school schedules to keep children indoors until conditions improve. Cold wave conditions gripped northern India on Sunday, with temperatures dropping sharply. Amritsar in Punjab recorded a low of just 1.7 degrees Celsius. Dense fog contributed to deadly multi-vehicle accidents. 2 men killed in a piled-up that caused a long traffic jam in Haryana. At least 20 vehicles collided on the Delhi-Lucknow highway, leaving 1 person dead and 24 others injured in Uttar Pradesh. Authorities have warned motorists to drive cautiously amid the hazardous weather. Asian markets mostly fell as investors weighed rising geopolitical tensions and fresh economic data from China. Concerns grew after US President Donald Trump threatened tariffs and demanded control of Greenland, drawing sharp pushback from European leaders who called the comments unacceptable. In Asia, China released key data including fourth quarter GDP and December retail sales and industrial output, keeping markets cautious. Japan led regional losses, with the Nikkei sliding nearly 1% as government bond yields hit their highest level since 1999. Hong Kong stocks also fell, while mainland China edged higher. South Korea outperformed, while Australia slipped on tech sector losses. Oil prices were little changed on Monday after last week's gains, as easing unrest in Iran reduced fears of a US military intervention that could disrupt global supply. Brent crude hovered near $64 a barrel. Markets pulled back from recent multi-month highs as the so-called Iran risk premium faded, despite continued US military movements in the Gulf. Prices were also pressured by US data showing a larger than expected build in crude inventories. Meanwhile, investors are watching Venezuela, though analysts say any meaningful production increase there could take years. Spot gold and silver prices surged to record highs as investors rushed into safe havens amid rising global trade tensions. Gold jumped nearly 2% to trade above $4,670 an ounce, while silver climbed more than 4% to around $93.7 an ounce. The rally followed comments from US President Donald Trump announcing new tariffs on 8 European nations, including France, Germany and the UK, tied to opposition over Greenland. The proposed tariffs would start at 10% in February and rise to 25% by June. Fears of European retaliation and a broader trade war boosted demand for precious metals, pushing both gold and silver to fresh all-time highs in Asian trading. China's economic growth slowed to 4.5% in the fourth quarter, the weakest pace in nearly 3 years, as weak consumer spending and a deep property slump weighed on the economy. Growth eased from 4.8% in the previous quarter, even as full-year GDP hit Beijing's target of around 5%. December data showed retail sales rose just 0.9%, missing expectations, while fixed asset investment fell more than forecast, highlighting fragile domestic demand. Industrial output offered some support, rising 5.2% and beating estimates. Despite trade frictions with the US, China benefited from a strong exports and a record trade surplus, allowing policymakers to delay major stimulus. According to a report from market intelligence firm SimilarWeb, Meta's Threads is now seeing more daily usage than X on mobile devices. The report shows Threads has continued to gain daily active users on its iOS and Android apps over the past several months. SimilarWeb data shows Threads has now reached 141.5 million daily active users on mobile as of January 7, 2026. In comparison, X had around 125 million daily active users on mobile devices. Despite the mobile shift, X continues to dominate Threads on the web. According to a Reuters report, South Korea will seek favorable terms from US tariffs on imports of memory chips. The remarks come after the Trump administration proclaimed tariffs on artificial intelligence chips. South Korea said the new US measures have raised concerns for its chip exports. Seoul referred to a joint fact sheet released last year under its trade deal with the United States. The fact sheet includes terms that protect South Korea from unfavorable tariff treatment. New Zealand secured their first ODI series victory in India with a 41-run triumph in the deciding third match. Daryl Mitchell scored 137 and Glenn Phillips added 106 to help the tourists post 337 for 8 in Indore. India's Virat Kohli responded with a record-extending 54th ODI century, scoring 124 of 108 balls with 10 fours and 3 sixes, but it wasn't enough. The hosts were bowled out for 296 in 46 overs, handing New Zealand a historic series triumph.